Welcome everyone, I'm Daniel Kittleson from Washington County Parks. Today we're going to be talking about birds of Hagg Lake, specifically spring birds. Today we have Stefan, which is a bird guide throughout Washington County and Portland. And I hope you enjoy the video today, and I'm going to hand it over to Stefan.
Welcome everybody, this is Stefan from Hagg Lake. Beautiful Hagg Lake in the background on a nice sunny morning. So today we're going to look at spring birds a little bit. So all the breeding birds have pretty much arrived and are active and singing right now. Slide. So I'm a bird guide, and this area, the Coast Range, is pretty much my home turf. So I go a lot to Hagg Lake and also the Coast Range in general near the town of Timber. And I love it out there. Hardly any people there. Hagg Lake's a little bit different, especially right now. We'll get to that. So why would you come out here? So summer has a little bit of an issue with that there's a lot of people here, a lot of boaters and fishermen. And so why would I have to deal with that, right? And the solution is you're not going to be where they are. There's a lot of space and a lot of trail that you can walk on, and you're not going to interact with people much. So it's very easy to find a peaceful spot here at Hagg Lake and to find yourself some birds. Today, there's a couple of things I want to address. One is the specialty breeders here at this time of the year, so we're going to look at some pictures. And the other thing is where specifically would you go look? And so if you come out here for a morning, a couple of 2-3 nice places where you could spend some time. Next slide. So spring really technically means when the breeding birds are active. So the residents are typically active a little bit earlier than the migrant summering birds. So it starts in April when they're singing, and then end of April, even mid-April, all the way up to mid-May, the summer migrants are coming in for their season. And so right now is when pretty much everything is in and singing. And the whole season, this bird song season pretty much ends, I'd say, in early July. So even into like mid-end June, you'll have a lot of songs still. It's worth coming out for. And then, once the song stops, it's essentially babies and interaction, but it's very quiet, and it's a little bit harder to find birds, but it's still worth coming out after that. When I'm glancing over here, it just means I'm looking at the slides real quick to remind myself where I'm at. So one key component of coming to Hagg Lake is in the breeding season is come early, because birds are active early in the morning. So bird song doesn't need to be dawn, meaning you don't have to be here at 4:30, but come out at 6 or 7. Don't wait until 10:30. And this is more important the later it gets in the season. So right now birds are singing even in the middle of the day to a degree, even at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but not in 2 months from now, right? It's going to be different. Then it's going to be just very early in the morning. So also important, the lake itself was fabulous in the fall, winter. It's not so fabulous in the summer, in the spring and summer. In the spring and summer, you're gonna have to go into the woods, walk the trails, be away from the water's edge. So the lake itself does not have suitable breeding habitat for waterfowl, really. There's mallard and maybe common merganser along the creeks, but otherwise it's not really the thing to do in spring and summer. One thing about habitats, there's a few different habitats that are active here, and so I just want to get into one habitat that's probably not so known, and so folks don't really have an understanding that it's actually here. So there's riparian, right? So that's lakefront and creek inlets. So there's a bunch of creeks coming into Hagg Lake, right? And that is where riparian habitat occurs. And riparian birds, therefore, will be breeding there. Deep timber, in terms of mixed coniferous forest and also pure coniferous forest are also around the lake. But then what you guys may not know is if you go a little bit uphill, you'll find clear cuts. And clear cuts are actually very, very important in terms of a variety of different species that you can't see any other way. So there's species that like the openness of clear cuts. And each species has sort of a certain time in the generation of a clear cut when they're active. So McGilly race warbler will move in when the clear cut's about 4 years old, and they'll probably move out when it's about 8, 9. So you get what I'm saying. So clear cuts are important, and there's a lot of staging throughout the progression when it fills back in. So that was a piece of habitat I wanted to mention here, as it's not necessarily obvious when you just drive around the lake and just pull into the parking lots. Next slide, please. So maybe you will remember from the last presentation, I'm just going to mention those guys again. They're still here. So bald eagle is here. There's at least a pair here. It's now being joined by a pair of osprey, which you probably will see when you come here. Not hard to see. Pileated woodpecker is still here. It's in the deep timber. It's calling occasionally. Will be hard to see. Next slide. Also still there, and I'm not going to get into the details, is the American dipper. So it is the only North American songbird that can actually swim and that dives in the creek. Usually it's flowing water that it requires to pick up aquatic insects and so on. You can see that at Scoggins Creek picnic area. And in fact, they do nest under the bridge, but they will, during the breeding season, also move up and down the creek. So it's not probably enough to just be pull into the parking lot and expect that it'll be right here under the bridge. Next slide. So now, spring birds, right? So arrived have, definitely the flycatchers have arrived. So they are, there's actually 3 of them. 2 of them are pictured here. Pacific Slope is one of them. I heard one this morning. They're definitely in mixed wood scenarios, and they're not at the top, but within. So you're going to have to get right into the woods, walk a trail to hear and see those. The Pacific Slope has an eye-ring, and it's a greenish bird. Whereas on the right upper hand side, the willow flycatcher is a grayish bird that does not have an eye-ring. Those are kind of the most significant differences, other than the habitat. So again, the Pacific Slope will be inside the woods. It could be mixed coniferous forest or coniferous forest. And the willow flycatcher will be out in the open, so watch for it in riparian settings where there's willows, or just shrubby habitat up a drainage like Tanner Creek. They're also sometimes called clear-cut flycatchers. So they'll be in clear cuts that are maybe about 5, 6 years old as well. And they can be really common in there. Next slide. Warblers. So warblers are mostly of neotropical nature, meaning they go down into Mexico or to the south to winter and then come back up here. So they have to do a potentially long migration to get here. They are not all super bright, but the ones that I'm going to show here are all really nice looking birds. So relatively common around the lake here is the black-throated gray warbler left. So it's a black and white, nicely patterned bird with a nice yellow little spot near the eye. And it's all around the lake here in mixed coniferous forest. He's somewhere mid-level to high up, and often heard and not necessarily seen. So for all these guys, it is good to know vocalization. So knowing the song will get you somewhere. That will let you know that the bird is there, and then you can actively look for it. So in general, prep yourself a little bit when you come out, and you know, maybe listen to a vocalization like the song. Say if you're coming out in end of May or early June, that'll help you a lot. You know, tracking birds down. Also, a very common bird around the lake, more in the understory, is the Wilson's warbler. So that one is common as dirt. The problem is he's deep inside and may not come out for you. So it's an all yellow bird with a black cap. So again, everywhere you go along the lake, if you walk along the trail, you'll hear these guys sing and also call. They've arrived. I've heard plenty this morning. They're definitely here and active. All yellow bird with a black cap. Next slide. So two other stunners here, and you know, just looking at the pictures, you'll quickly agree. You'll have to agree. The left one, bottom left, is the hermit warbler. The hermit warbler is a treetop species in coniferous forests. And therefore kind of hard to see. So you need to crane your head all the way to the top 6th or 7th of a tree. The very tippy top, that's where these guys usually hang out. And there's an expression, it's called warbler neck, which is a condition that you get from staring at the treetops for too long. So it just means your neck hurts from looking uphill, up towards the treetops the whole time. It is a stunner though. The male has a black throat, the female doesn't. And there's no yellow on the breast. The breast is all white, and the head itself is all yellow. So absolute cutie. So the guy on the right, on the upper right, the McGillivray's warbler, is more of an understory species, and it's around the lake, but also up in clear cuts. It can also work areas that are of coniferous forests that are a little bit more open and let sun in, that have an understory. Also a stunner, so it has a broken eye-ring and a sort of a blue-gray, shiny head, and there's a blackbird calling here, and otherwise the back is green and the belly is yellow. I think the blackbird is trying to defend territory against us here while we're recording and making a lot of noise. So kind of cute. So the hermit warbler, again, is possibly uphill from here in a deep timber forest, coniferous forest. The McGillivrays can be found along the lake in the riparian inlets, creek inlets. So I saw one this morning at Wall Creek. All right, next slide. So there's a couple of guys that are not so easy to spot. They make some noise and they call and sing, but they're very drab birds, and you have to look very hard to actually ID them. So the one that actually stays here in the winter is the Hutton's vireo, the bird on the right. The Hutton's vireo looks a little bit like a ruby-crowned kinglet, but has actually a thick, stubby bill. The kinglet has a very pointed and thin bill. The kinglet is very active and flicks its wings a lot. The Hutton's vireo is sort of sluggish when he moves around the woods. And right now, he calls a lot. The call is very repetitive. So when you hear something that's, it's a short, could be ascending or descending call note, but it's done over and over again to a point where you actually want the bird to shut up, then it's a Hutton's vireo. And they have started calling maybe even in March. They're still calling as of this morning. In fact, when I say call, it's actually a song. That ascending or descending repetitive note is actually its song. The warbling vireo, on the other hand, is a migrant. So it'll show up here in early May and will stay for the spring and most of the summer. And it will sing a lot out of mixed forest. And it's very hard to see, meaning it'll stay in the thick of the foliage, unfortunately. And knowing the song is crucial for this guy. So here are the two vireos, Huttons on the right and warbling on the left. So maybe one other feature to tell them apart is that little eye stripe. So the Hutton's vireo has none of that. He sort of has an eye ring, and but the warbling has a white eyebrow and a dark black stripe through the eye. Next slide. Okay, another real stunner is the Western tanager. And this guy is actually not so hard to see. So he will be in most areas around the lake. And the male has an orange head and an all yellow body with black wings. Two wing bars in which the upper wing bar has yellow and the lower wing bar is typically white, but that upper yellow wing bar is diagnostic. So I'm showing a female here on the left, so you can see how different they are. They are sexually dimorphic, kind of drab compared to the male, so no orange on the head. Watch for that kind of thicker bill. So this bill is made for essentially going after bees and thicker insects. So, easy to squash those and treat those. So tanagers are bee eaters, in quotes, rather than there's a genus of bee eaters not related to that, but they eat bees, the tanagers. So the female also has a yellow upper wing bar, and that's diagnostic. So watch for them around the lake, pretty much anywhere, also at the picnic areas and at the parking areas, at the edges of it. It'll be around. Next slide. A bird that's very, very active in May and into June, and then not so much anymore, is the evening grosbeak. It's an absolute stunner with yellow, white, and black, and a thick bill. I mean, it's a clown bird. It's one of the most sought after birds in the area because it's actually often heard but not seen. He likes treetops, and that makes it not so easy. He flies in a group often, and hangs around, and near the treetop, maybe working on cones or some seeds that are most likely always high in a tree, and then moves off. They are a little bit nomadic, meaning in good years where there's a lot of food, they'll be abundant, and then in bad years they may be gone. But I have yet to have a bad year at Hagg Lake for evening grosbeak. It's a bird that is guaranteed to be here in May and June in good numbers. And so for that, if you are targeting an evening grosbeak, what you should do is listen to the call note. The call note will be abundant. So every time you get out of the car, you'll probably hear one of those somewhere. And you can't see him very often. But, if you're patient, you will. In particular, there's a feeder up Tanner Creek Road where I found several at the feeder this morning. So that's possibly an option. That feeder is not always filled. So over the years, some years, the folks have not, it was empty, have not filled it. But it was filled this morning, for example, so it's worth pulling into Tanner Creek Road, maybe about a fourth or something, third of a mile up the road. It's a good place to see them at eye level because they're so hard otherwise. But getting to see one of those will make your day, I guarantee it. It's a stunner. Next bird. Rather than the evening grosbeak, who has a thick bill but is winter hardy and stays around. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they're staying in the area. They could even go north if they feel like. So they're nomadic and they're just looking for any kind of food source that they like. If they don't like a place, they'll go 50 miles someplace else. This bird, the black-headed grosbeak, is a migrant. So he'll come up here. He's typically at my house back at around May 1st, and he'll stay for the summer. Also has a thick bill. As you can tell from the two images, on the left is a female, and on the right is a male. They have a massive bill as well. And whenever a bird has a thick bill, it means that they're cracking seeds that are hard to crack. So that's why the two grosbeaks have thick bills that they can manage. So for the evening grosbeak, they can manage cones and grab seeds out of cones. And this guy as well, he can do just about anything with his thick bill. Again, they're sexually dimorphic. The male has a black head and a bright, unstreaked orange breast. The female has a ever so slightly streaked breast, not as bright as the male, and a big eyebrow that the male doesn't have. They're relatively prominent here. They like riparian and slightly mixed forests that aren't too much dominated by conifers. So, but most of the access points here also along the trail will qualify. Their song is a little bit similar to the American robin, but very fluty. That's maybe a good clue to separate them. The Western Tanager from before has more sort of a harsh song that's also reminiscent of an American robin. Okay, next slide. A bird that is being seen here in the spring and summer season that we don't really have anywhere else in the area other than high elevation forests is the band-tailed pigeon. So the band-tailed pigeon is a forest pigeon that has a greenish reflective area on the neck and a white neck stripe, a yellow bicolored bill, and is very large. So it's size-wise, it's about the largest of the doves that we have, doves and pigeons that we have. And it is actually a migrant, even though it has no problems with the temperatures, but it does go south and then does come back in April. And it's kind of a beautiful bird. It likes the treetops. So if you see something large sitting on a treetop, don't assume that it's a raptor. It could be a band-tailed pigeon. They also travel in flocks. So the best way to see those, though, is to go to the Scoggins Creek picnic area, because they come in to drink at the picnic area. So fabulous place to see them. Kind of any time of the day, pull in, wait a little bit, band-tailed pigeons might be coming down. So sometimes I see up to 15 or 20 of them there. So nice bird. Next slide. So I'm not going to take a lot more of your time. I have a couple more slides. So some others that I didn't really get into to not keep you busy for like 2 or 3 hours here are the house wren. The house wren likes shrubby and clear cuts, shrubby areas and clear cuts with dead wood. So I don't have a picture here right now. The common yellowthroat will be in riparian areas, also around lake inlets. The Swainson's thrush, I'm gonna talk a little bit about, because he will be starting mid-May. He arrives early May, but starting mid-May, he will be singing, and the song is ascending and fluty and sort of a song of Hagg Lake. And they sing for a good 2 months. always from within somewhere. It's a bird that's very drab and very hard to see, but the song is everywhere. So that's why I am including it here. The orange-crowned warbler is a small, kind of drab yellowish bird that also likes shrubby areas. And it is greenish, has a little bit of an eye line, and sings a lot early in the season and then turns quiet in June. And finally, also not covered by a picture is the western wood pewee. What they will like is more open parkland situations, so they could be here in the picnic areas. They could also be uphill in clear cuts. What they don't like that much is deep timber. So that's not their habitat. Okay, so in the next slide, which is the final slide, I'll be talking about a little bit where you want to go. So in fact, it's pretty simple. So the lake has about 30 access points. They're all numbered and labeled. And pretty much any of these access points is good. The edges of the boat launches will be good places to be very early in the morning. Then with people showing up, it won't be worth going there, other than maybe visiting a restaurant. Scoggins Creek picnic area is a good place to go. There's not that many people. There's also a restroom. You can walk a little bit up and down the creek, not too much, but as said, it's good for the band-tailed pigeon, and a decent place to go. Also maybe to have a picnic. The disc golf course area is worth going. You can walk in there. I forget what the number is for that, but it's a relatively large area. You can bird the areas around the edges of the wood, and then you can also go and bird down, all the way down along the trail. It's a good place to kind of get away from people. There's not that many people playing disc golf there, so it's a good place to kind of get away. And finally, side roads. So I've talked in the beginning about clear cuts. How do you get to a clear cut? So I want to give you one really good clear cut that you can actually legally go up towards, and it's a little bit of a walk and a drive, but it's a good example of what I was talking about. It's the end of Scoggins Valley Road. So take Scoggins Valley Road, drive up maybe about 2 miles, and you're going to get to a gate. And there's limited parking, but probably it'll hold about 5 cars. And there's all kinds of other birds up there that we haven't covered because they are not really along the lake itself, but mountain quail, ruffed and sooty grouse, purple martin breeds in the clear cut up there. Northern pygmy owl is along the lake as well, but it is, in particular, it's also up there working the forested edges of the clear cut. The McGilly race warbler will be up there again, and bluebirds are clear cut birds. So I'm pushing the clear cut here because it's very specific habitat and can be very, very birdy. So if you want to check that out, the end of Scoggins Valley Road is really good. You also can try St. Creek Road and any of the side roads, Nelson, Tanner, Stepien, Lee Road, are all interesting. All good places to get away from the busy lakefront. And you can stop anywhere. There's a few residences along these, but typically it's very quiet. You stop along the dirt roads. There's no traffic, and listen for the birds. So that's kind of my tip on where to go at Hagg Lake to find birds. And that wraps it up. I think I'm done. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you out at the lake.
Thank you everyone for viewing this edition of Birds at Hagg Lake, featuring spring birds. Thank you to Stefan for coming out here and showing his expertise on birding. Look out for more programs and events with Stefan and me regarding Birds at Hagg Lake. Thank you.